they have and organizations that they belong to, and hopefully give you some ideas and get your creative juices flowing. Do you think that'll work, or do you want me to have somebody film you?
That'll work.
Landon, you want to film it?
Hi, Facebook. No, we're good.
All right. But thank you. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, James Clark and Emma Swanson.
Hi, guys. I know that we even need to introduce ourselves now because he did a really good job. I hope this is as cool as he makes it seem. I'm James, and yeah, I was here and I did theater and mass media, and I guess I enjoyed my experience enough to come back and do stuff. And actually, I met Mr. Dunn at the one-act plays. Because where were you in, what school were you at then? In 2003? Woodland, yeah. So yeah, we go way back. So this is Emma Swanson. I tricked her into coming down and living with me a few months ago. But girlfriend doesn't sound as professional on on the booklet that we were filling out, so we went with partner. But she's actually a designer for
Bobby Jones.
Bobby Jones.
I do lifestyle clothing and stuff, so I'm a fashion designer actually. So I design clothes for
So, yeah.
money.
So, and I made this thing, but I would have felt silly talking about making costumes if I didn't bring her, because she's way more talented than me. So primarily we do Star Wars costumes, which these armored suits are. This is actually, a lot of people, it looks like Boba Fett with the helmet, I guess, without the bald guy. Mandalorian armor, though, is primarily where we both got started in 2008. And this is actually from Star Wars Rebels.
Which premieres tonight.
Yeah, season 3 premieres tonight. If anybody watches Star Wars Rebels. So we primarily got started with that, and we have a lot of Star Wars costuming experience, but we've made other things as well, and we'll make other things, and we'll probably go through some materials here in a minute. Let's see. This actually was one that Emma did.
That was my first costume.
And this is metal. This is, what gauge is that? Tell me about this.
18 gauge aluminum.
And she actually forms that on she has a trailer hitch and a bowling ball that she forms these on.
What you'd expect. Cutting, hammering. And I literally did all of this in my garage I was actually your age when I made this. So this was just one hammer, one pair of tin snips.
Mm-hmm.
I got the metal from just kind of asking around and seeing if anyone was willing to give me scrap metal, and as forms, because I couldn't afford anvils or anything official like that, I literally used a bowling ball just on the ground and hammered on that. So just junk I could find in my garage.
Yeah, so you can you can use what resources you have available to you and kind of make them work. A lot of this is version 3 since 2008 when I made this, but the chest plates, I put in the oven at my parents' house when I was living with my folks. And it smells like plastic, and it's really toxic and bad for you, so you should do it at night when they're asleep. No, you should do it with the windows open, be very careful. But really, you're just putting them in there, and they get real noodly. This is called Sintra, yeah, so this is a 1/8-inch piece, thick piece. This is 3mm thick piece of Sintra. And Sintra is really just brand name, rigid, sheets of plastic. So you can get this for a lot of the armor pieces. I go with the 1/4-inch, the 6mm thick, just because it looks bulkier. And a lot of guys will bevel down the edges so it looks rounder and it gives it more shape. But this is from a video game, and it was really pretty two-dimensional, so I didn't do that. But the Boba Fett and Jango Fett, theirs is beveled. And I made this pretty much how she did, in the garage with, I didn't even have those yet. I had this. I made this whole thing with this and my oven.
This is just a heat gun, which is basically hair dryer.
Yeah, it's like hair dryer. It heats up
But
4
some
times.
hair dryers get that hot,
So what you do though.
What are your types of pieces to your clothing,
So she uses just snaps. For a lot of the heavier pieces, yeah, she'll show you here.
It's just snaps you can buy from Joann's or Walmart, and you just sew one to the fabric and you JB weld or use some sort of super glue to the back of the armor.
There's a lot of different kinds of super glue too. There's one for every purpose. I mean, you don't want to use hot glue because it gets brittle, and then if it's cold, then that'll snap off. Some people just use hot glue though, and theirs lasts for forever. So really, it's a crapshoot. But you could use E6000 is really popular because it kind of flexes with you. Like all of mine's on with E6000. Hers is all JB Weld. So, but I'll use snaps for placement and then Velcro for weight. So then, I mean, because you could have snaps, but then when you move, you don't want the plates to swing around. And I know like this is just like Star Wars armor, but you can apply this to Halo, Mass Effect. Mass Effect and Halo, actually, they use a lot of this stuff. I don't know. This is like yoga floor mats. Yeah, see? So EVA foam is really popular right now. We haven't really used a whole lot of Warbler. That one's really popular right now too. But so EVA foam, I mean, they use this stuff for Iron Man, Master Chief.
And that stuff's really cheap.
Yeah, you can get a giant stack of this for like $40 at
A lot of the less than $40 too. You can get like one of those sheets for like $4.
Oh yeah, one sheet. But I mean, I got like a bunch of them. You can get these at sporting goods stores, or you can order them online for really cheap.
Yeah, but a
EVA foam.
lot of the really heavy like detailed armor they'll actually make out of the foam because then you can actually like cut into it and make shapes and it looks really hefty.
This is a thermoplastic also, kind of like the Sentra, and that basically means that when you apply heat and you bend it, and then when it cools, it's going to hold the shape. So like the gauntlets, like her chest plates that she has there, the shin guards for these thigh plates, like thermoplastic, when you heat it up, different ways to heat it up. I mentioned the oven. We have the heat gun, which is actually it's good for a lot of the more complex, smaller details. Whereas the oven, if you wanted to get like a gauntlet that forms all the way around your arm, you want to heat the whole thing evenly across it. Put the thing on 350, set the piece in there for 30 seconds, and you'll see it get a little droopy, and you pull it out, put on like a hoodie or something, and then just wrap it around you. That's all it is. So, but you can also use, boil water? So you can like heat up water too, and you can get like a big pot, but you don't want to ever cook in it again because you've been boiling toxic chemicals in it.
Yeah, I accidentally dyed our roommate's spoon purple the other
Yeah.
day because I was dyeing this wig. So we found out by digging into mac and cheese, which then turned purple. So I had to eat all the purple parts.
But in a minute, like we'll probably just get up and you guys can get a handle on some of these pieces to, see the different thickness and like the weight of them. But like you can find templates and files for any of these armor online. Same for Iron Man, Batman from any of the Arkham City games, Mass Effect. Those are like really popular. So, but they're pretty much the same tools for all of them. Let's see. What else were we talking about? I mean, honestly, and Corey said this is all handmade. Most of this is handmade, but like not necessarily by us. So they basically get what's called a buck, which these are based on some screen use props. These stormtroopers. This is from a company called the Novos, and basically they take a vacuum form machine on a buck that they have molded, and they put like plastic a little thinner than this across it, and they heat it up really hot, and when they drop it over it, the shape of the armor piece is in it. And then they ship you that, and you got to cut it out and trim it out and put it together to make it into this. So there are companies that can give you a head start on all of that, which is pretty nice. Novos, and if you guys have any questions about any websites or resources, you can ask us after.
Now you're light up digital thing on your chest.
Yeah, it's just LED. You can find those online. I got that from Fetronics.com, and you can get them customized. That's actually my initials and my birthday, with a couple of lines removed in between them. Really, it's funny too because like I wore this for 6 months, and then I put LEDs in it, and after that, it's everyone's favorite part of the costume. The gauntlets actually used to light up too, but I haven't plugged in because I got dressed in like 6 minutes. But anything you can have that glows, any little LEDs, which really only take like a 9-volt battery or less, and they take no power at all. So you can light up your whole costume with stuff. Like that right there, that's just a 9-volt doing all that. And that'll run me for 3 or 4 conventions, just running the whole time. So I think I replace it like twice a year. But then the guys that have sound in their packs, which they play the Ghostbusters theme song and all that, they'll usually have a rechargeable battery, and then they will just plug in. Our friend Victor, he just plugs in his pack into the wall when he gets back to the hotel room after the con. So, let's see, what else should we talk about? Does anybody have any questions? And then maybe that will segue us into some other things. Cool.
Where would you find that plastic, the heavy?
The heavy stuff. Okay, so this Century you can actually find lots of different places. There's US Plastics is a website.
Sign stores, anywhere that
Yeah.
does signage.
I had a family friend of ours who had a sign shop and lived down the street from us, and I said, hey, do you have any extra Sintra? And he sold me like a giant 4 by 8 foot piece that I picked up with my truck, and I mean, it was expensive, but it was like a giant piece. But you can find little pieces like this on like McMaster-Carr, which is in Atlanta, and then you can go to US Plastics, or they have them on eBay sometimes.
You can buy it online too. There are plastic shops that sell online. That's where I got the plastic for mine. I just got like a little piece and it was only like $12. So
Yeah, this is rigid closed cell phone PVC is the technical term. But then kind of like Xerox is photocopy, then Sintra is like a brand name. So, but basically if you put that in your Google search, Google will know what you're talking about. So you can find that on there. And this is all the same stuff. See, like, because this is all, and you're like, I wouldn't want to wear that as armor because it's wiggly, but when you cut it into small shapes, it doesn't really do that. And then when you heat it, it actually, like, you can't heat it over and over and over again, so, because then it'll get brittle and break. But once you heat it more and more, it'll hold the shape, and like, this stuff doesn't move, so. Let's see, what do we want to talk about now? The pack over there, who likes Ghostbusters? So this is like a 1984 inspired pack because a lot of the heating and air fittings and parts they don't make anymore because that was like 30 years ago. So, but they make resin casts of a lot of the pieces, and this actually right here, Mattel produced this guy like 40, well, it was like 6 years ago. It's never done that before. So anyway, so this is a Mattel. This is like a prop replica wand. This is like $150, but for sound, for lights, you can't get anything that cheap commissioning that from like a prop maker. So this is not a bad way to start a costume, this right here. And then I just have like a little stress fit bit of PVC pipe. Home Depot is like your best friend in the whole world when you go and make costumes.
I would argue that's not a good place to start because that's $150 off the bat.
That's
but a lot of this stuff is literally just plastic that he's made into these shapes just by gluing them together.
Yeah.
So you can get started and get a ton of this done with like $15 worth of supplies.
Yeah, I know guys that have made a lot of this pack out of
Because
like
that's where I was
Tupperware.
when I was starting.
Yeah.
I was just like super broke. I had $7 and so I bought some metal and then learned how to make it and turned it into something.
So yeah, hopefully that was a really long answer for your question. Anybody else?
Yeah, the paint, what techniques do you use to get that to adhere to these plastics?
The first step, we joke around. We say this is the hobby of sanding. So I don't know about metal.
Sticks pretty good.
Sticks pretty good.
Yeah.
So for the
It's
plastic
straight.
though, this stuff is coated with because when they stack them in the store, they don't want them to get stuck together. So you got to sand it down a little bit to get the coating off and for it to hold. Usually people will just prime it and then paint it, but you got
It's
to.
just regular spray paint.
Yeah, some of you use airbrush, but the different weathering techniques would be like, so Boba Fett costumers would do multiple layers, and they would use masking fluid or mustard or toothpaste to create like some of these weathering patterns, like all these little scratches and things. So you would paint your base coat, which would be like your gunmetal, which is all here. Boba Fett, they have like a yellow and a blue layer, and then you're spreading around your masking fluid or your mustard or whatever, and then you're doing your top like green coat, and you use just sanding on yours, didn't you?
No, I use like toothpaste.
Yeah,
You
right there,
put it
yeah.
on the edges and then you just wipe it off and the paint sticks in certain places. This one was metal, so I literally just threw it on the ground a lot and like scraped it on rocks. So
It looked really nice, and then she
Yeah.
ruined it now. Yeah, the thing is, they're not supposed to be clean. Like, pretty much all armor, you want to look like beat up. I mean, I can't think of a game where they have pristine costumes. Like Gears of War, I mean, those guys look like they have blood and guts all over them all the time. So, but yeah, so the weathering, mainly just spray paint, and you gotta figure out if you want to do like the topical like paint on your weathering and your scratches, or if you want to do the layered different colors and use some sort of masking fluid or and then we do what's usually called like a black wash, where we take acrylic and you water it down, you take a sponge and you just coat the whole thing. I've actually done like brown and black wash on mine, and you let it sit for a minute. Sometimes you let it sit for a long time, and then you take a paper towel and you just kind of brush it all off. But what it's done is it's gotten in all the cracks, so that's why it looks really dirty. And then if it stays too long in a spot you don't want it to, you just kind of sand it off lightly with a little fine grit sandpaper. Hobby of sanding. So let's see here. I don't know, what else? Another question. Yeah.
When you keep the foam
Mhm.
and you're molding it to your body shape, how
Right.
do you avoid not burning yourself? Do you need like a cast of your arm?
No, some people make casts, and that's the thing. Like, if you have the ability to make like a head cast or a body cast, or even just use, we have mannequins.
I think for the most part, people just put on a thick sweatshirt.
Yeah, it really doesn't get that hot. If it's getting that hot, then you've heated it too long, probably.
Yeah,
Like,
it cools very quickly.
I burned myself on glue guns, never with the heat gun. So, like, it's really not ever been kind of that big deal with those. Wear a hoodie or jeans, and they should be fine. So, good question. Yes, sorry.
How long did it take to build these?
How long did that take for you? She repainted this in like 4 days at my house the other day, so.
That's a hard question because usually we work on it for a long period of time in little pieces. Like you'll complete one piece and you'll take a break and you'll complete another piece. Or like this one I've upgraded several times. So like I've been building on this for like 3 years now. But the original one, I don't know.
I probably
This
built
is
my
maybe
first one.
2 months.
Yeah, mine's probably like a month and a half.
Yeah.
That pack, Harold Ramis died, 3 years ago, and I had the wand, and I was working on a costume from Azrael from Arkham City, and I was just kind of like, oh, I'll be a cosplayer and have a cool nut, and so, but anyway, so Harold Ramis died, and I built the pack in like a month, because it's all I wanted to work on.
He's one of the Ghostbuster actors.
Yeah,
That's
he wrote and was in Ghostbusters.
Which one do you have?
Egon.
Oh.
So yeah, when he died, I finished that pack in like 3.5 weeks because I really wanted to do it. Basically, my rule of thumb is that I tell people is just do one thing every day. So if you go downstairs and you sand off one piece that you're working on, and then you've sanded something that day, you're good. Or the next night, if you hit everything you're doing with coat of primer, and then you go back to what you're doing. And then you get up in the morning and you check it and you flip it over and you hit the other side with coat of primer. And then you've done your one thing for the day already. So like you just do one little step, and then every time you come to your little shop area, it'll be more towards being complete. Yeah.
Okay, so when you're cosplaying at a con,
Sure.
for example, that was in the summer. If you're like in a costume that's really baggy and it's really hot in it, how do you keep from passing out?
Moral fortitude.
I don't know. It's
Have you
hard
gotten
because
overheated?
not super, but I get claustrophobic in my armor sometimes when I'm.
So she
getting
only
ready.
wears helmets. It's good.
Yeah. So usually parades when we're waiting for parades.
Yeah,
It's
parades
hard.
are awful.
Normally, what I experience, like we went to the Braves game the other day for Star Wars night, and you were super hot when you first started, and you were like, "How are we going to get through this?" But within like 30 minutes, you kind of sweat through it, and you
get that sweat
I
layer.
don't know. Your sweat just kind of does the job it's supposed to do.
A lot of people put fans in their helmets. Like some people
Yeah.
have a ton of electronics, like speakers and fans and all sorts of junk. Then they have the rangefinder electronic that swivels.
I have never done it before, but I've had the idea of maybe if I were to make a bodysuit, I thought maybe I'd sew a pocket onto the inside, like at the small of my back, and put like an ice pack in there before I get going.
Some people
So
do
that's
ice
an idea
packs.
I thought of.
Some of the guys, the Mass Effect guys, do the they get the hydration suits where it runs. They can like pump. That's really advanced though.
$5.
Do what?
So I would suggest
You have
sewing a
negative-
pocket with an ice pack.
Me too. Here's where all my money is. No, but like fans, so I was Darth Vader at the Braves game 2 years ago, and his fans went out as I was walking under the stadium to go on the field and stop. You guys know the tool race that they do? So the tool race is coming in, and I'm supposed to stop the tool race and like force push the one guy down, and then 2-bit, the drill, would come and win. And I couldn't see him because I had sweat over one eye, and you can't reach into a Vader helmet because it's enclosed at the neck. Whereas like the Mando helmets are nice because they're open on the bottom, so the breeze gets out of there. But Vader, I mean, it was just, you end up looking out the little mouth triangle more than the eyes. So that was miserable and amazing at the same time. That's how I felt.
You all done any work with like aging leather and stuff?
Yeah, well,
I've done some leather work. This I made.
How do
I
you
wish-
get it to look old?
Aging?
Yeah.
Sandpaper
Yeah.
mostly. Like, yeah,
steel wool, sandpaper,
just kind of the old-fashioned way.
sandpaper.
And I would usually use like layers of dye, like if you've seen like sea sponges where they're not as even as just like a regular sponge, I would use probably something like that and get it like barely wet with leather dye and just kind of like dab it or scrape it and in like uneven.
And a lot of stuff, like she said with this, with the metal armor, and we weathered some cloth material, some fabric before, just leave it outside. Like, leave it, especially if it's a costume that, you know, is like,
I don't know if I'd leave leather.
well, no, not for a long time, but you know, for like Skyrim or any of those type of games where you want to have something that looks like it's old and it's
Yeah,
been
worn leather is probably
outside.
just mottled with color, so the dye, and then a lot of sandpaper or any sort of like buffing you can do, because worn leather is really just leather that's like buffed to the, you know, the backside. So
Not done a lot of leather work. Actually, I have a leather project coming up for a Jedi costume. I've got to build a leather belt. So next year, I'll have a better answer. Anybody else? Yeah. The helmets. Okay, so we don't actually make the helmets, but there are.
some people do make the helmets.
Yeah,
but
I wish I would have had my buddy John Ficker here, who is in the process of moving to the state again, so he can't be here. But
for the most part,
he makes helmets out of
resin casts.
Yeah, resin.
Like people will sculpt these, certain fan crafters. We don't get them from like, you know, an actual store.
Yeah,
It's
those
other
don't exist.
customers who make these and invest the time. So they'll sculpt and they'll make a resin cast and they'll like slush cast these. But a lot of people do actually attempt to make their own helmets, especially if they're on a low budget, where they'll basically start with a hard hat and they'll take plastic like that and cut the shapes out.
Or I've seen
sort
them use
of
that for
with
sale
the-
signs
yeah,
on the
for sale
side.
signs too. And they'll make it by cutting out the shapes of that and just a lot of glue, and then they'll use Bondo usually, which is like a filler. It's for cars, but they'll fill all the cracks and make it look nice and sand it down and make it look polished. So
You know when you're looking at a car, it looks like it's got like Play-Doh in between some messed up part of it. It's Bondo. So it's like adult Play-Doh. So, but yeah, so they resin cast a lot of these helmets. A lot of people use Pepcura now, and you can find files for that on different websites, and they will literally sit there and fold and tape pieces of paper and then either fiberglass it or Bondo it into the shape they want. Or you can just buy a $900 3D printer and you'd be a better customer than I am. So. Yeah, 3D printing is crazy. Like this little guy, let's pass this guy around. So this is 3D printed. You'll notice it looks like it's just like stacked layers of stuff. I don't know, so you guys can pass that around. And basically they take a filament, like a plastic filament, and they nearly liquefy it, and they print it in the shape of whatever you're trying to recreate, and it just kind of goes around, and then you have your 3D object that someone has digitally rendered. So that's pretty amazing. But I mean, I've seen people make entire prop weapons, which we couldn't bring because we're at a school. But those are pretty neat. But they make helmets for them now. I mean, all this stuff that I'm wearing, you could 3D print. Yes.
So, other than 3D printing, how can you make frog
The same way they make them in the movies. You can kit bash a bunch of airsoft guns, or take, like Star Wars is all World War II technology. But
Star Wars
yours
guns
were
are literally built on top of real life, like World War II weapons.
Yeah.
So like what I did.
So don't use real weapons, but airsoft is really good. All my
Like
airsoft.
I have one of Han Solo's blasters, and that's built over a Mauser. That's right,
Mhm.
right. And so basically, you can just buy like a $5-10 plastic airsoft version, and then find junk. Like I think I went to Home Depot and bought like this little like $2 attachment for a vacuum cleaner to like make the nose cone and like put holes out in it so it looked right. So that's how most people do it.
Yeah, building on top of things that already exist is pretty much the way to go. For Star Wars, add scopes. There's just scopes on the bottom and on the side of all Star Wars weapons that you would never be able to see through. But literally, yes, sir. Okay, so those actually have a face mask for those, and they do those kind of like they do the Stormtroopers, or they have 3D printed ones. It's called a face shell. And then the really nice ones have the lenses that are
Do you mean eyes
magnetized.
specifically, or like?
Yeah, so you would wear it under the mask you're talking about to hold the shape of like your nose and all that, right? That's called the face shell, and that's basically like so you don't see, because you never see Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield or Tom Holland's lips through the mask. He's actually wearing a plastic face shell that fits over him, and those you can get 3D printed, or you can cast them out of the same stuff like these guys. They're actually not that expensive, so you can buy those. I actually found one in a store for like a kid's mask, and I've modified it, so you can do that too.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of us still just use like kids' toys. Like,
Yeah,
you can buy
lots
the
of kids' toys.
Stormtrooper blaster that's like the wrong colors at Target and
Mhm.
paint it to look realistic. So
There's
we do
this,
that all the time.
What's the guy's name? Doopy Doos?
Yeah.
So there's this, it's a really old vendor on like the 501st and RPF, the replica prop for him. And it's called Doopy Doos, and he sells, it's like a $60 for maybe more than that, well, whatever, let's call it that. And it's a resin kit, and it's all the pieces that you can add to the old like 90s Stormtrooper blaster that they sold, that Hasbro sold, or Kenner. So you basically can just glue all those pieces on, and it'll look just like the movie. So there are conversion kits for a lot of those.
Or just buy the toy and paint it to look real.
Exactly.
Because
So.
that's pretty convincing most of the time.
Any more questions? Yeah, in the back.
So, how do you develop your shoes?
With my shoes, with the armor on them,
Yeah.
she's way better at that than me. You take that one. These are glued on. They're garbage.
These are just attached the same way everything else is, just snaps that I've sewn through the shoes, but the shoes are like flimsy enough that I could sew through them. But yeah, just the same way, just form the plastic over the foot, and then I sewed snaps through the boot.
Or you can Velcro. So
Yeah,
Velcro.
too, because they make sticky back Velcro, so you can stick it down. And
Never use sticky back Velcro on like a vest, because I've seen people literally in the parade walking and just the costumes just kind of slowly, and it's real gross.
if it's on fabric, just sew it.
Yeah,
Like,
just sew it.
Even if you don't know.
So it's really not that hard. She's really good at it, but I'm terrible, and I make do. So, other questions? Yeah.
What would you recommend for like finding wigs and such?
Oh yeah.
Wigs. I mostly buy mine online. I'd like to find a shop that's like close by, so I don't have to like,
There's a
order
ton
it
at
as
Eddie's
soon
Trick
as-
Shop, but I don't know how good they are.
I usually do Arta wigs, just because they have the biggest selection and a ton of people use them. So that's the one I usually go to.
I'm gonna have to get a wig because. And then there's a Kyle Katarn is like a Jedi costume from the old Dark Forces video games, and he's got a beard and full head of hair.
And you have neither.
And I don't do either of those things. So, but yeah, so she gets all her wigs online.
Yeah.
The internet, man.
And like this one did not come like this. I dyed this.
Yeah.
So it was a white wig that I.
She's got like 4
used to
more.
look.
I keep looking for them, but they're not
And then
here.
I'd use they make this product called iDye Poly. So it's essentially just fabric dye, but for polyester or like non-natural fibers. And so you just heat it up, and I would just dip this in to dye it this color.
Any of those? Yeah.
Well, I have 2 questions for you.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
right now I have very short hair, but I used to have hair down to here and it looked a lot like Shakira's, and I still managed to shove it under a wig.
How do you do that?
I would usually try to braid it in like 4 parts, so like 4 braids just anywhere on my head, and I try to like wrap it around the crown and then like pin it down with bobby pins, and then I'd usually use like a wig cap, just like a like swim cap essentially, and then put the wig on top of that. Yep.
You guys have good questions. Usually like questions, I'm like, how do you cosplay? So, good. Yeah. Oh, what was your other one? So you had 2. Okay, great. Anybody else? Cool. Do you guys want to come see some like materials and stuff? Like maybe don't pick up the helmets, but all these other materials over here you can check out.
Yeah. Maybe like don't pick up or touch this table.
That
but,
table.
like,
This table. We can talk about
play
this
with it.
table. If you have other questions, we can answer those. So, little interactive part over here. Well, yes, I mean, so this right here, this piece is actually the same as my arms made out of. The back piece is called motherboard. So that is some LEDs. So this, it's like a fiberglass shell, like the outside stuff. This is very light.
Yeah, like the first one I did, I was like,
Yeah, 1 second. Let me finish showing him. So there's all these little resin parts. Like this is resin, this is resin, and then these are just little, insulation suits you can get at Home Depot. Sell these online. This is a 2-inch.
yeah,
These are about 2-inch
anything like
PVC
that,
pipes.
and then
These
it
are
just kind
1-inch
of go
PVC
into
pipes that you cut the length.
so then it's,
And then you basically like cap both ends with a little
Yeah,
plastic,
those.
and you on the inside there's literally just screws into the back of them. And then
that is
it's really, it looks complex, and then having made it now, it's really pretty simple the way it's all the separate pieces come together. Alright, so put that on there. It is, well, the frame is metal, put it on my backpack. Alright, so let's see this guy now. Yeah? Alright, turn over here. Turn the other way. Other way, other way, other way. There you go.
Okay, so how do I strap this? Do I have to strap this in or just leave it open like this?
You can do either one you want.
yeah.
So there you go, you're Ghostbuster. So you can actually do the belt.
I do hair, like, Star Wars, and I wear that Twilight stuff on that, and I push the book before that has
Sure. So you can pull it like a seatbelt?
I always suggest doing some more new things, and I get even
I don't have hands to do that, but someone else can.
well, it's like, I don't know.
Oh no.
Yeah, it should be like Ben 9, oil,